for the joy of a fruitful marriage and being able to love my bride for the rest of my life. I knew it was worth it. I knew that I needed to figure it out. This is one of the lowest points in my life. And everything inside of me wanted to quit. In some ways, I wanted to self-sabotage. I wanted to experience that pain. It's almost like I felt like that's what I deserved. It's like I felt like, you know what? This is what I'm meant for. I'm meant to experience this suffering. I don't deserve to be happy. I don't deserve to have a fruitful marriage. But when I looked at the price, I was filled with strength again to pursue it. I knew that the pain of figuring it out was more than worth bearing because of the prize of being old and gray with Joanna. And I think about Jesus, who not only went to the cross, but bore all of our sin upon himself and experienced separation from God, something he never experienced before. Went from the highest high to the lowest low for you. And he did it for the joy set before him. What is going on, Valley of the Heroic family? Welcome to another episode of the Valley of the Heroic podcast. Now we have an oddity today. It's back-to-back solo episodes, but don't worry. Next week, we will be right back to interviewing people. We have some interesting and special people who will be coming on soon. One of the things that kind of put me back is just being sick. And if you hear it in my voice, there's still a little bit of gruff there. Last week, I thought I was better. And unfortunately, it didn't go away. By the end of the week, my voice was gone again. And I was sick again. I had to go to the doctor this weekend. So we shall see how this rolls out. But I'm here showing up, hopefully to give you guys some value, some insight into how you can grow. And today I want to speak specifically to anybody. If this is you, you want to stick around. If it's not you, maybe stick around anyways, because God might minister to you. But I want to speak specifically to anybody who feels like they are in a season of endurance. Do you feel like you are in a season where you have had to endure? And so the question then becomes, how do you endure? How do you go through difficult seasons in your life? How are you able to endure those difficult seasons well? How do you get through them in a way that both honors who you are and who you're called to be, and at the same time honors God and who he is in your life, and how you seek him and how you love him? You know, that's definitely one of the most difficult things for us to be able to accomplish. It's not an easy thing, but I believe that if we dive into that topic today, we may be able to leave with something that may minister to us and help us during that season of endurance. I don't know about you, but I sure have had a long season of having to endure. So I hope that these words would minister to you, would help you, would strengthen you, and would give you the desire, the strength, the ability to continue as God continues to call you and pull you through this difficult time. So the title of today's episode is Set Your Eyes on Him to Endure. And if I change the title of the episode, what you see when you clicked on it, please excuse me, but that is what we initially started off with. But either way, the topic, like we just spoke about, is setting our eyes on him to endure. So in a way, I've answered the question, but I want to develop that. Because what does it mean to set our eyes on Jesus? I want to make that come alive for you in a way that when you leave this episode, you would not only understand it more deeply, but be able to grasp it and personalize it so that you can then walk in it rather than it being something that you know cognitively, something that you know inside of your head. Let it be something that you know inside of your heart. It then becomes easier, maybe simpler, not easier, right? Because there's a difference there. It becomes simpler for us to follow it because we have sort of a step-by-step process to follow rather than wondering what it is that we need to do. So I'll start off with speaking for myself personally, sharing some stories with you that I think will be of interest to you. And it's for me to be honest about something that's a little bit difficult to be honest about because I'm kind of laying myself out there and just sharing parts of myself that maybe I haven't talked about before or a little bit embarrassing. But it starts off with knowing that naturally, I am a pain averse person. What do I mean by that? Well, I'm the type of person, especially in the past, something that I'm changing and growing on. But if I saw even a whiff of difficulty, I just bow out and I keep it moving, right? If there's something that I kind of want, if there's something that, I would like to achieve, but I'm not completely sold out on it. The moment it became difficult growing up, I just said, you know what, I'm good. And I remember as a teenager, I would become almost like puffed up about it. Like I'd be like, nah, I don't want to do that. When really there was a part of me that did want to do it, but the difficulty that I saw in front of me in pursuing this thing, for me outweighed the desire of achieving it. And so I kind of have to, throughout my past, I kind of have to be completely sold out on an idea before I stick around and bear difficulty. And if I wasn't completely sold out on it, it was, I would chuck the deuces and peace out. Like I was good. And I would be like really headstrong about it to try to mask and hide the fact that what I really didn't want to do was do something hard. And so I have a good example of that. I think this was in fifth grade, which is the first grade I remember, or it was either fifth or sixth grade, whichever grade it was where you can try out for middle school sports. And in that first year of middle school sports that I was eligible to try out, I decided to try out for the basketball team. Now, I really wanted to be a part of the basketball team. I wanted to I had this whole mindset where I kind of wanted to turn my life around. And I had this idea of becoming a middle school basketball star. No, it wasn't even that deep, but I don't know. I was a heavy set kid. And naturally throughout my life, I put on pounds easily. And at that time, I was definitely out of shape. I did not grow up playing sports. I was not into sports like that. But for some reason, I got in my head that I wanted to try out for the basketball team. Has anybody ever been there before? And so I go into tryouts, and I remember I was slightly late because they were already running. And I walk in, and I'm like, oh, nah, what is going on in here? In retrospect, I'm like, what were you expecting, little Eric? But I don't know. I thought we was going to be walking in and everybody's throwing a basketball around and everybody was going to embrace me. Like, this is the one we always needed. I don't know what was going on in my head, but I see everybody running around. I set my stuff down on the bleachers on the side. And, I start running. And, I'm running and I'm out of breath in 2 seconds, maybe 3 seconds max. And I'm going and I'm jogging and 1 lap goes by and 2 laps go by. And I'm like, what am I doing right now? This is wild. And I told myself, I don't want this. And I literally literally, I promise you, maybe 3 to 5 minutes into my first tryout, walked over, grabbed my stuff, and walked out. And as I'm walking out, some of my friends are looking at me like, what are you doing, bro? Because the reality is that I didn't even try. First whiff of difficulty, and I was like, nope, this is not for me. I'm out of here. It did not take much time for me to quit. I just knew that I was biting off more than I could chew. It was not something that I was willing to go through in that moment. And I said, I'm not even willing to stick it out through this first practice. All of this realization hit me. I was like, I am not ready for this. I am not built for this. Running is not my thing. I'm not even good at basketball. What am I doing here? So I said, nah. I was biting off more than I could chew, like I said. And the prize that I had in my mind, whatever it was that I was hoping to get out of joining the basketball team, whatever I had my eyes set on, was not enough. It wasn't enough to push me past the pain of running those laps. So I said, nah, and I peaced out. And endured the pain of walking out and everybody looking at me like, yo, you gonna give up that easy? Nah. I had my head high as I could, and it was the worst. And so I think of that moment because it was in 6th grade. That's a pretty meaningful and impactful moment. You know, things that happen in school are extremely impactful. They could really, really mark you. The next day coming into school, I was like terrified because I knew that I had to face people and everybody's going to be like, yo, what happened? And that's exactly what happened. But the idea here is that, like I said, that prize that I had, whatever, I can't even remember what it was that I truly had in mind of what kind of outcome I was going to get out of this. It wasn't enough. So contrast that with a time in my life that was 100, 1,000,000 times more painful. This is one of the most painful moments in my life, and I haven't actually shared this with much people, but there was a moment in the first year of our marriage. If you know, I've shared before, maybe you haven't shared, maybe you haven't heard me say, but in the first year of my marriage to my wonderful wife, Joanna, I was actually clinically depressed. And depression, number one, is something that I would never wish even on the worst people of this world, because you are literally not yourself. Your mind is literally chemically imbalanced. And in this season of depression, as you can guess, it put a terrible, terrible, terrible strain on our marriage. We reached such a low, and Joanna was so wonderful throughout the beginning of my depression. She was pursuing me and trying to encourage me and trying to do everything that she possibly could. Every idea she could possibly come up with. There's things that she tells me now that she did back then that I don't even remember because it was such a dark time that all I can remember was the darkness. But I do remember her presence and her love, her pursuit, her trying to be there for me and being an amazing and wonderful wife. And even in the midst of that, what my mind kept telling me was a lie straight from Satan that I was no longer in love with her. That was my reality. My depression brought me to such a low point that I was convinced that I no longer loved Joanna. I was convinced that it wasn't going to work out. I was convinced that I didn't deserve her, that she would be better off without me. And so that led to a lot of like bad thoughts, darkness in my mind, self-sabotaging behavior. I started to self-sabotage our relationship, and I started to push her away. And it became extremely difficult for her to bear the burden of a depressed husband who is also treating her like crap, treating her like absolute and total crap. I look back at that time and there's nothing but shame and embarrassment. And we reached a pivotal point where I remember we were in our dining room and she looked like she had so much pain and weight on her. And for some reason, I said to her, "Do you even want to be with me?" And I remember the moment where she looked at me and tears welled up in her eyes. And she said, "I don't know." And she took her wedding ring off and placed it on the dining room table and walked away to our bedroom. And in that moment, full of the depression, full of the weight of the reality in her words, full of the possibility of what could come in the future, both negative and positive, I stopped. And I said to myself, I need to make a change. I looked forward into the future and I saw two possibilities. I literally saw a version of me that hates myself because I let her go, because I pushed her away. And I said to myself, if I do not fix this, if I do not figure this out, I am going to hate myself in the future. I'm going to look at this moment and forever be filled with so much regret because of my decision in this moment. And the other possibility I saw was a me that was beyond the depression, a me that was happy, that I decided to defy all the odds and figure it out and find a way to go against what my feelings were telling me, what everything inside of me was telling me, because I knew, had to be the Holy Spirit, because I knew it's not true. I was literally telling myself, you know you love this woman. And there was another side of me that was like, you don't. And in that moment, being able to know, to ascertain what was true, even though everything inside of me was telling me something else was true. But to know what was actually true and decide I need to live in truth, even though everything inside of me says that that is false. I need to find a way out of this. I need to turn this around or I'm going to lose my wife. In that moment, what happened was that I decided that the prize of keeping my wife, of having a marriage that was worth fighting for, of finding a way to both love her and to love myself again, was worth the fight. So in that moment, I decided to do something that should be impossible. I willed myself out of my depression. In the next 60 to 90 days, I literally willed myself out of the depression. And as more and more time passed by, I realized just how much the darkness was clouding what was true. The darkness was telling me one thing. The depression was telling me one thing. The enemy was telling me one thing. And I was shrouded in all of this darkness so deeply that it felt so true. But somehow, some way, through in the midst of all of that darkness, a tiny ray of light got through. And I decided to grab on that. I decided that the prize was worth the difficulty. Maybe back in that basketball tryout, the prize wasn't worth it. I said, no, I don't want to do this. I don't want to go through this pain. I don't want to go through this hardship. I don't want to push my body in this way right now. It's not worth it. So I quit. But in the midst of potentially losing my wife forever, I decided that was not worth it. I decided that quitting was not worth it, I should say. I decided that quitting was not an option and that it was worth it. So what darkness is clouding your judgment right now? Where are you setting your eyes? In the midst of your difficulty, in the midst of your struggle, what are your eyes set upon? You see, when I came to that moment where I was at a crossroads and I could have pushed her down that path where she said, I don't know. She didn't say no. She said, I don't know. And I could have just pushed her further into uncertainty. Instead, I chose otherwise. I decided to pursue her. I decided to pull her back in because I knew that it was worth it. What is worth it right now in your life? What things are you letting slip through your hands that God has called you to grasp? What are the things right now that God has called you to obtain that you are letting slip through your fingers because your eyes are set on the wrong thing? Hebrews chapter 12, verse 1 says this: Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us rid ourselves of every burden and sin that clings to us and persevere in running the race that lies before us while keeping our eyes fixed on Jesus. Let us rid ourselves of every burden and persevere in running the race that lies before us while keeping our eyes fixed on Jesus. So the question is for you today, in the difficult seasons of your life, what are you setting your eyes on? What are you setting your eyes on right now? What version of you is deciding your future? Is it the hurt you? Is it the broken you? Or is it the healed you that is making decisions for you right now? In light of that, what can you do today to have a better version of yourself be the decision maker? What do you need to actively pursue healing from? Who do you need to forgive? Who do you need to let go of? Or what do you need to let go of? What conversations do you need to have? What change do you need to implement in your life? When life gets hard, what do you depend on? What is the typical thing that you turn to when life is hard? Do you turn to complaining? Do you turn to those things that make you comfortable, that make you feel more like you are in control? because you feel like you have such a lack of control. You have to take back control in some way. Are you turning to self-medicating behaviors? Are you isolating yourself? Are you diving deeper into sin? You know, one of the ways that I kind of turn when life gets hard, what I turn to that is comfortable sometimes is cleaning. When I get angry, I just start cleaning. And this doesn't happen all the time because I'm not the cleanest person in the world, but sometimes I'll just turn to cleaning because it gives me a sense of control over my environment. I can't control the difficulty I'm going through, so I need to clean something. And that makes me feel like I'm in control, and that's all okay. But what if instead in that moment I could turn to Jesus? What would it look like if instead of trying to find a food that is going to self-medicate or soothe me, or turning to pornography, or turning to spending money so that you get a new item and it makes you feel a little bit better? What would it look like if instead we turn to Jesus? I definitely isolate myself, pull away from people. And with isolation typically comes sin. Not always, but typically. And I remember early on in my life, whenever I felt really, not early on, but early on in my faith, whenever I felt very alone and I felt like I was in pain and I felt like I was going through difficulty, I'd want to turn to having sex. I'd want to turn to finding somebody to mess around with, because it gave me, again, a sense of control. It gave me a sense of feeling like I was in control over my life, like I could give myself pleasure in the midst of my pain. What do you turn to when life gets hard? What do you depend on? So what is the typical thing you turn to? The next question is, what is actually the biblical? What is the biblical thing to turn to? Well, the first thing is to find your sword. In the armor of God, we have the sword of the Spirit. What is the easiest way for you to connect with the Holy Spirit? What is the fastest thing that makes you feel closer to God? Is it prayer? Is it worship? Is it community? Is it serving others? Is it reading the word? Hey, maybe you don't connect as well during worship. I definitely think there's room for you to work on that area, but also at the same time, if you connect with him extremely well through the word, why are you in a difficult season trying your hardest to do the thing that comes less naturally to you? Press into the thing that comes naturally to you. Connect with the Holy Spirit. Wield your sword. What else is the biblical? Community. The thing about accountability is that you have to invite it in. The thing about community is that you have to buy into it. Yes, the other person has to be a willing participant, but community only comes if you are willing for it to happen. It doesn't matter how much people will try to get close to you, try to support you, try to love on you. If you are not a willing participant, it's not going to happen. It's even deeper with accountability. If you want to stop fornicating, if you want to stop watching pornography, if you want to stop cheating, like you're tired, if you want to stop feeling so much rage, whatever it is, the thing that you find yourself weak in, and you want to stop it, and you're trying to do it on your own, fam, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. If you feel like you are in a dark season, and a lot of it is due to your sin, to a sin that has got its hold on you and you can't overcome it, family, you need accountability. And accountability only comes when you invite other people into your life to do life with you. They're not going to force themselves in, yo. You have to be both willing and seeking out accountability. The more you try to do it by yourself, it's just not going to happen. So we got finding your sword, community, and intimacy with Jesus. Do you prioritize connecting with Jesus? The excuse is always, I don't have enough time. Is that really true for you? Do you really have no time? Is it really the fact that you have no time to look for him, to connect with him? Maybe you are limited on time. But the truth of the matter is that we always find time for the things that we need to do. So if you're not finding time for it, that means it's not high in the pecking order for you. As somebody who is a daughter, I'm not a daughter, as someone who is a father to two daughters under two. No, sorry. They're two daughters under 3 with a third on the way, but they were 2 under 2 when the second one was born. Running my own business, trying to be a supportive husband and father. I understand what it means to have very little time. I also understand what it means to be creative with your time. Are you finding ways to be creative about your pursuit of Jesus? Are you finding ways to set your eyes on him? You see, the fact of the matter is this: the darker that life becomes, the darker the season that you are experiencing, the more vital it is for you to find the light. Yes. Thank you guys so much for your patience, because I'm not going to lie, I'm struggling right now a little bit with my voice, but it's true. The darker the season is, the more important it is for you to commit to finding that time. And sometimes you're going to have to be creative. And you're also going to have to not be a perfectionist. Oops. You're also going to have to be okay with whatever it is that you're able to do. If you're only able to do 5 minutes when you're used to an hour, so be it. Don't forsake the 5 minutes and say, I'm not going to do anything because all I've got is 5 minutes. No, be creative. Find ways to connect with him. God gave you creative power. If you can't connect with him in the ways that you used to, find a new way to connect. Find a new way to surround yourself with light, because you are in the midst of a tough time and you have to endure. God has called you to endure. Will you commit to it? Finding a reason to endure, setting your eyes on him, finding the prize is the only way you're going to be able to endure the difficulty. Hebrews chapter 12, verse 2 says this: keeping our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith, for the joy that lay before him, he endured the cross, despising the shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross. For the joy of a fruitful marriage and being able to love my bride for the rest of my life. I knew it was worth it. I knew that I needed to figure it out. This is one of the lowest points in my life. And everything inside of me wanted to quit. In some ways, I wanted to self-sabotage. I wanted to experience that pain. It's almost like I felt like that's what I deserved. It's like I felt like, you know what? This is what I'm meant for. I'm meant to experience this suffering. I don't deserve to be happy. I don't deserve to have a fruitful marriage. But when I looked at the price, I was filled with strength again to pursue it. I knew that the pain of figuring it out was more than worth bearing because of the prize of being old and gray with Joanna. And I think about Jesus, who not only went to the cross, but bore all of our sin upon himself and experienced separation from God, something he never experienced before. Went from the highest high to the lowest low for you. And he did it for the joy set before him. So I ask you, what is the reason why you are pursuing God right now? What is your reason for enduring this difficult season? Why are you enduring it? Why? Is it because of a gift that he promised you? Some promise he made to you that he has said that he's going to give you something. He's going to give you a house. He's going to give you a son or a daughter, or he's going to give you whatever. Is it because of that? It's not enough. Is it because you feel like God is going to use you and he promised you influence? And you want to have a purpose in this life and be used by God and be able to impact people for Jesus. And that's such a noble thing to desire as long as your heart is in the right place about it. But let me tell you something, it's not enough. Is it because you want to leave behind a legacy for your family? Because you want to change the trajectory of your past and your bloodline? Is it because to you it is important to leave behind a wonderful namesake for your children? Again, a noble thing, not enough. All of these reasons are great. They're good things. But when difficulty arises, their strength will be found wanting. When difficulty comes, they will not be able to carry you because the weight of following God can only be carried by God. How did Jesus endure the cross for you? How do you endure your cross for him? The question I've been asking myself and other people lately is, what if Jesus is all you got? All that you got out of enduring this difficult time? All that you got out of pursuing the fullness of your faith? Seeking to run your race? What if all you got was him? Would that be enough for you? Would it be enough? Hebrews chapter 12, verse 3 says this: consider him who endured such opposition from sinners, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. Consider him who endured, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. Why do we lose heart? Why do we lose heart? We lose heart because we are constantly focused on ourselves. Hard reality. We lose heart because we're focused on our circumstances. But Hebrews chapter 12, verse 3 tells us to consider him. If we could instead consider him, what could change in our life? What if when we feel down, instead of considering ourselves, we considered that he loves us? What if when we felt weak, we considered that he overcame and that we can overcome through him? What if when we felt lost, we considered him, the one who says he will save us, that he will carry us, that he will be with us, that he will never forsake us? What if instead of considering our circumstances, our mountains, we considered the one who can move mountains? The truth is that considering him is a discipline that in this season of endurance, he is trying to form in you. And we can only gain the opportunity to truly consider him in the midst of difficulty. What do you mean? Why do we only consider him when we're going through difficulty? I don't know. For some reason, when things are going well, we consider ourselves too highly. And when things are tough, we're pushed to a place where we have to reconsider. Literally, we have to choose to consider him instead of ourselves. Will you consider him instead of considering yourself? Will you stop actually telling yourself what you deserve? God is pushing you to a place of reconsideration, where you would gain the discipline of considering him and him alone. Will you resist him, or will you consider him? God is calling you to set your eyes on him, the author and the finisher of your faith, so that you can run your race and so that you can run it well. I pray today that you would be filled with the Holy Spirit so that you could consider him and therefore run your race all the way to the end. God bless you guys. For those of you who are still here, thank you for listening to today's episode. I love you, and I cherish the fact that you made it to the end. With that being said, I want to invite you once again to become a member of our Patreon. In our Patreon, you gain exclusive access to behind-the-scenes content, exclusive content, the ability to vote, a private community, and all of these great things. But what does that mean for you? That means that you are able to connect in an even deeper way, an even deeper way, to be able to achieve closeness with God, community, the ability to move forward and press into the call that God has for your life. So I want to invite you through our Patreon community. You'll be able to press in even deeper and become the hero that God is calling you to be. We're inviting you to it. What are you waiting for? Inside of it, we have 3 different tiers. One starting at $5 of a commitment, $10 commitment, and then the final one, a $25 commitment. That each have a different level of things that you get. And so I want to invite you guys, pray about it. If God is leading you to it, it'll definitely help us to continue to produce this free content that you're experiencing right now, and so that others can do the same. We will be blessed to have you there. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me on Instagram, or you can comment down below as well. Make sure that you leave a like, that you subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss another episode. Those are free things to do that absolutely help bolster our channel and for us to continue reaching people with the message that God has placed in our hearts. God bless you guys. I hope you have an amazing week. I'll see you in the next episode, the next video, whatever it is. Take it easy. Peace.